Well, let's talk about how Trump's tariffs are affecting e-commerce. As you know, I have Capital Club. In Capital Club, which is some of the most elite entrepreneurs on the internet, about 70% of them are in the e-commerce space. In fact, yesterday I was on the call with one of the biggest suppliers of NAD supplements in the world. NAD is a nootropic. And when I asked him, hey, what's the status with your fees? Are you paying more? And he said, no, I'm not paying an extra dollar. Why? He's like, well, first of all, I'm not selling to the US. So it doesn't matter because US can't impose tariffs between France and China. So what a lot of manufacturers are doing is they're just redirecting their warehouses to a third-party country. So they'll just go to Vietnam, they'll go to Thailand, and they'll just ship from there. 2, China doesn't pay taxes. And number 3 is that drop shipping has changed. You can't just ship things from China anymore, for a $3 profit margin, because there's no longer room for that. That's why building a brand, a moat, something that gives you the ability to kind of have an audience outside of paid traffic is really good, where you can run an Instagram story, or you can continue to post on your feed or a reel, and that just generates natural sales. The issue that I found with e-commerce and the tariffs was on the opposite side of the spectrum, which was luxury brands. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Hermes. All of these brands were manufacturing a lot of their stuff in China, and then they were shipping it to Italy or to France for assembly. These people got pretty much exposed because the quality that people thought was this artisan quality of Europe was in fact artisan quality from China, or these products and the goods, or whether it's the leather or the metal that was used, is actually coming from China. So these people had to basically reinvent their supply chain. When it comes to crypto, specifically Bitcoin nowadays, whether we talk about Bitcoin being co-opted by BlackRock or co-opted by the US government, it's very much tied to the stock market and to the performance of what the government is saying. It used to be that crypto wasn't necessarily correlated, but today it is. It pretty much acts as a glorified tech stock. So when Trump says, hey, tariffs are going to be imposed and, growth is going to slow down, revenue might become stagnant, the entire market creates what? A sentiment. Moments create sentiments, sentiments dictate the market. And crypto is a lot more susceptible, to sentiment. You see big market swings. But nowadays, there might not really be a big differentiation between the stock market and the crypto market. There's no reason why a company like Nvidia should be swinging 8% a day off of a Trump tweet. That sounds like a meme coin to me. It doesn't sound like something that is stable. It sounds like speculation. It doesn't make sense that Elon Musk sends out a tweet and his Tesla stock can either pump or dump. It doesn't really make any sense unless it's a glorified meme coin that runs off of sentiment. The entire stock market is off of sentiment. So when you have tariffs that cause uncertainty, that sentiment of uncertainty makes people sell off their bags. So I would say tariffs are not necessarily going to be an issue for e-commerce. I don't think so whatsoever. I think merchants will pivot. If they can't sell to the US, they'll sell to the rest of the world. There's plenty of people. When it comes to investing, you just need to be very careful that with one tweet, your bags can be nuked 50%. But also with one tweet, your bags can go up. Whether it's your crypto bags, your stock portfolio, doesn't really make a difference. And we see a lot of speculation. And the speculation gives room for what? Volatility. And volatility is where traders make money. I'm not a trader myself. I'm a long-term investor. I'm a swing trader. I like, 3-6 month long trades, maybe a little bit longer. But in crypto, that's very risky. You would have held, and we were talking about ETH, for example. If you would have held ETH for the last 4 months, you would have been down about 60%. So you also need to understand that the market is a lot more fragile than it would be if sentiment wasn't easily provoked. When I got started in crypto back in 2016, buying Bitcoin for about $588, the sentiment was harder to move because crypto wasn't on social media. In fact, social media wasn't really even used or talked about in that same context. Today, one tweet goes viral around the world, gets 100 million impressions, 5 million investors see it at the same time, and it creates a reaction. So I think the tariffs, what they're doing is they're exposing the fragility of the system, and they're exposing how easy it is to manipulate people through sentiment. And once again, you cause and evoke an emotion. You cause and evoke an emotion, you get people talking, and then you lead to an action, in this case, buying or selling. We saw Trump tweet saying, "This is a good time to buy." I don't know if you saw that tweet. And within 3 hours, the market just absolutely ripped up. Called that outsider trading. He told everybody this shit's about to pump. But that's sentiment followed to action, and action leads to outcome. Doesn't matter. Like you talked about, everything's about pattern recognition, whether it's e-commerce, crypto, social media marketing, building a personal brand. Control sentiment, control narrative, and you control the outcome.
On the pattern portion, I think that's a very good take on the way sentiment is, especially with social media. Things would not have crashed the way they are because the information would have been publicly distributed like it is today, even compared to 10 years ago, because all this stuff wouldn't be on the news.
Much
Trump
more
wouldn't
risk
be speaking
control,
24/7. Yeah.
Slower pace of distribution, slower pace of people receiving the information. Today, you don't have to wait for the New York Times to roll out, hey, a headline, and then that headline get translated in Chinese in order for the Chinese investor to make a decision. Today, just hop on Twitter and everybody sees the same exact thing at once. So things are getting pretty volatile, which is good. It shows you, once again, the fragility of the system, but once again, volatility creates what? Opportunity. And with the opportunity, if you're smart, is when you make money.
In this bull run, what have you learned about cryptocurrency that you didn't realize in previous bull runs? Because one I noticed was that the cycle tended to be Bitcoin pumped, then altcoins pumped, then meme coins pumped, then there was room for NFTs in the last cycle, but this one seems to be Bitcoin straight to meme coins. Why do you think that is?
I think people realize that altcoins are meme coins, and they said, fuck utility, we're here to gamble. That's what we're doing, we're gambling. I'm 100% authentic about it. When I buy a meme coin like Chill Guy, and I lose $800,000 on it, it's a fucking gamble. There's nothing telling me that I should buy it except I believe that somebody's gonna buy it off of me later on because the hype is going to continue. But you're doing the same thing in the stock market. You're assuming that somebody's going to buy this at a later price than you for more than you paid. And I would say the cycle now is different. I would say Bitcoin and then everything else. You have Bitcoin doing its own thing, whether it's been institutionalized, co-opted, it's run by the government, it's run by BlackRock, it doesn't really make a difference. But now you have all these legit projects coming up, and let's say they've been working on it for 5 years, but it's boring. Nobody really understands it. It has no adoption. Influencers can't talk about it because it's too complicated to express or understand. But you can say, hey, Pepe coin, here's Pepe. This is a meme coin. Have you ever seen Pepe on your news feed? Okay, perfect. Well, that's the reason we buy it. That's it. And people are realizing that most of these altcoins are what we like to call vaporware, which is there's no reason for this business to actually have a coin. They're just having it because they're trying to make money, which is totally fine as long as you're transparent about the fact that it's a meme coin. The reason I like meme coins is because there's no actual guarantee of return. You're just speculating and gambling that the price is going to go up or down if you're shorting it. But this cycle, it's Bitcoin alone, leading like nothing else. And then you have everything else. In between it, you have a small bracket of altcoins like Solana, like TON, that have real utility. And not only have real utility, they have a real ecosystem and real users. But you can also look at projects like XRP. What does XRP do? I don't know. They say it's the remittance, the ISO remittance of the world. It's bullshit, not really a thing. It's a fucking glorified meme coin that's worth $100 billion, and you're looking at the CEO of it and he's dumping on your head. But they have such good lore, such good storytelling. You have dozens of YouTube channels that just cover this. It's meme coin culture. And once you understand that, you realize that most of the things that they sold you about crypto are just schemes wrapped and masked in utility versus just saying, hey, this is a meme coin. We're betting on culture. We're betting on what? Narrative plus distribution plus engagement in order to have the market pump. But then you have Bitcoin, which is kind of the store of value, which once again, all of that is sentiment. The moment Michael Saylor sells a Bitcoin, one Bitcoin, and says, hey, you know, MicroStrategy has to protect themselves a little bit here. We have to sell. What does that do to the sentiment of the market? What do you think happens if Michael Saylor sells a little bit of Bitcoin, publicly reveals it? A lot of people are going to lose confidence. Confidence is a sentiment. If you lose confidence, the chart goes down. Prediction. Michael Saylor, at some point, decides to sell some Bitcoin, publicly announces it. I guarantee you the market goes down. If I'm wrong, I'll give somebody in the comment section $1,000.
That's a good one.
You just have to comment, I studied.
That's a good one. I remember when Elon sold Tesla's holdings, it crashed the price a little bit. I don't want to delve into that too much, but is the marketing of Bitcoin decentralized?
Yes, at this point, because you'll see a shop, a kiosk in Peru or in Bolivia or in El Salvador that has a Bitcoin logo. That's marketing. So marketing can go through word of mouth. It can be organic, grassroots. Bitcoin's been around for over a decade. Or you can have artificially designed marketing or distribution. And either way, yeah, I would say it's organic with Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has a lot of believers. Simultaneously, do you think Larry Fink from BlackRock started talking about Bitcoin before he had his bags packed? Before he said, hey, you know, I have to have my bag ready to go because he has a lot of what? Leverage. So when he says, hey, BlackRock's about to launch an ETF, I think Bitcoin is a store of value. If he's saying Bitcoin is a store of value against government uncertainty, you better believe his bags are fucking packed. So he is the marketing machine behind Bitcoin as well. Institutional money is very tied to crypto. Banking nowadays is very tied to crypto. The government is very tied to crypto, and they have to sell it to somebody. Whether you're an ETF, Bitcoin has to sell the ETF or the idea of a store of value in order for the ETF to sell. BlackRock makes money off of what? Management fees. So they need people to hold on to their Bitcoin in order for them to make money. They don't make money just off of the price of Bitcoin going up because they're holding Bitcoin on behalf of people. They're just an ETF. So the sentiment can be both artificial and organic. With Bitcoin, I think it's a little bit of a different situation. With altcoins, it's pretty much all engineered through marketing agencies, through influencers. But once again, marketing agencies and influencers is pretty much all you have in order to reach people. So it makes sense that that's the means of communication. But I think Bitcoin is in a different plane, different reality of its own.
What would it take for Bitcoin to hit $1 million?
Bitcoin will inevitably hit $1 million for one of two reasons. Either the US government or other governments continue to print currency, which means the current dollar value that you have is going to go down. Or two, people are going to realize that the fiat system is a scam and that they need to run from institutional banking to another third-party asset or a safe haven that they can custody themselves, like Bitcoin. I had a lawsuit a while ago. It was about 3 years ago. Not very big, small little lawsuit. But for security purposes, the bank says, hey, we're going to freeze some of your funds. Like, what do you mean some of your funds? If they're my funds, then how are you freezing them? Like, oh, well, it's the policy. They couldn't do that if I had my own ledger with my own Bitcoin. So as governments begin to become more erratic, as governments become more authoritarian, you're going to see people flee to Bitcoin. The reason this is interesting is because the viewers that are listening that are not from America, from a first world country, will understand what I'm talking about. You can't trust the Zimbabwe government. You can't trust the government from, Nepal to have the best policy in the world. So you have to have a hedge against what? Bad policy, theft, and Bitcoin is, at least for third world countries, a phenomenal asset to have. Pull up the chart of Bitcoin versus the Japanese yen. When the Japanese market was crashing, Bitcoin was at an all-time high in proportion to the yen because it acts as a counter of the sentiment that people have towards the security that their government is providing. What is the dollar backed by? The good faith and credit of the United States. That's what the FDIC insurance says. And two, it's the military. So if you can't trust the FDIC, right? If your money isn't insured, if the banks can just take it, and if the US no longer is the superpower of the world, then the dollar weakens. That's why Bitcoin is this safe haven that people are running to. For first world countries where people have Venmo and PayPal and Cash App and it's easy to send money and, I can send you $100,000 in a wire and it might take 2-3 days, it might be inconvenient, but the money will land, the money will stay in your bank account. It may not feel like what I'm saying is legitimate, but if you come from a third world country where you don't know if the bank that you're operating under is a Ponzi scheme, if you're in the Ukraine and they don't let you pull more than $200 cash when a war starts, or they say, hey, you can't move $100,000 of gold because we think that is money laundering, all you have to do is buy Bitcoin and you can move it from any place around the world with full self-custody. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. That's why I respect Bitcoin. I respect the robust system that it has, while still understanding that when it's all said and done, sentiment is what controls the price of Bitcoin. But back to your question, what is it going to take for Bitcoin to hit $1 million? One of two things. Naturally, people will adopt it because it's a better form of money. Or two, the government will continue to fuck up, print more money, and naturally, it'll be, in comparison to Bitcoin, the price will go up.
I think that was my biggest sell on Bitcoin.